Republican wave extends to the governor's races across the country. At least 24 states elected Republican governors on Tuesday. Only 8 chose Democrats. 4 races are still undecided at this hour.
2 GOP incumbents thought to be in trouble were reelected. Florida Governor Rick Scott defeated former Governor Charlie Crist, and Wisconsin voters gave Governor Scott Walker a second term. He survived a recall election 2 years ago. New Jersey Governor Christie is with us as chairman of the Republican Governors Association. He campaigned for most of the GOP winners. Governor, welcome.
Good morning.
Now, if I was head of the Republican Governors Association and I, in fact, had seen this kind of victory and I was thinking about all those people that I'd helped, I'd be feeling really good this morning.
Yes. So good morning, Charlie.
Can we call this a victory lap?
You certainly can call it an acknowledgement of a lot of hard work by a lot of great governors.
So what's the biggest and the sweetest victory for you personally, where you...
Paul LePage getting reelected in Maine. Paul LePage is just one of the most decent, honorable people I've ever met. Wears his heart on his sleeve, loves his state, has an amazing personal story. And on the incumbent side, I think Paul LePage is the sweetest one. And to win in Massachusetts, Maryland, and Illinois last night. It's a good night for a blue state governor as chairman of the RGA.
So what do you want the Republican senators to say and do today? What do you want them to accomplish to set the right tone for the next 2 years?
Well, listen, for Republican governors, it's just about doing your job. And I think that's what you saw, Charlie, across the country. You know, Scott Walker being affirmed in Wisconsin, Rick Snyder being affirmed in Michigan, Rick Scott being affirmed in Florida, Sam Brown back in Kansas. These are folks who just went about doing their jobs. And I think that's what the American people are so hungry for. I saw it when I traveled to 37 states. There's a lot of anxiety in the country.
You know what was really interesting that happened in the governor's race is actually you had a pretty tough map facing you. It's not like the Senate races where Democrats were trying to get reelected in states that Romney had won by double digits. We knew Republicans were going to win. We didn't know how big. But in the governor's races, it was actually an uphill battle for you guys.
It sure was. Listen, we were defending 2/3 of the seats, 22 of 36. And in 9 of the states, President Obama had won them twice. So, you know, we went into it thinking if we have 26, 27 governors after the evening, not 31, 32 like we're going to have now.
We didn't see President Obama campaign in many states. He did campaign in the state of Maryland. Michelle Obama was there on Monday. That surprised everybody on election night.
Yeah, well, listen, Larry Hogan ran a great race. And you know, they're rejecting the policies of Marty O'Malley and his lieutenant governor, Anthony Brown, who was the candidate of high taxes and big spending and big government in Maryland. And even for Maryland, it got to be too much. That's quite an accomplishment by Marty O'Malley and Anthony Brown to make it too much for Maryland.
In a pretty reliably Democratic state.
Incredibly reliable Democratic state. I mean, you know, it's one of those states. I mean, you think about it, there's only been 2 Republican governors in the last 50 years. You know, Spiro Agnew and Bob Ehrlich.
Back to the Senate. What do you want Mitch McConnell to do? Because as you've suggested, this was a protest not against, also about the president, but more about the country and people feeling left out. What can the Republicans in the Senate do for those people today?
We need to get things done, Charlie, and put things on the president's desk and make the president make some decisions. You know, Harry Reid's protected the president for the last number of years. Any of the real tough issues have never made it to the president's desk because they went to the Senate to die. And I think that won't happen now. We need to pass tax reform. We need to have a national energy policy. We need to do things that are going to help to make jobs grow in this country and have people prosper. The anxiety they feel is not only anxiety from foreign problems, but also economic anxiety. I think that's what the Senate can do. Work with the House, get things done, put them on the president's desk, and then the president has to be the decider.
So as you look towards 2016, as you sit here personally, do you feel some kind of vindication and validation? Because you've been taking lumps recently for your comments about the sit down and shut up.
No, well, listen, that stuff happens all the time. Folks in the media love to focus on that.
It wasn't just the media, though, focusing on that.
Listen, well, you know, whatever, but you guys report it, so that's how people know about it. I mean, you know, the fact is, I'm never going to apologize for being who I am. And if somebody stands up for 2 minutes, holding up a sign, yelling over me, there eventually is going to be a time where I'm going to say, okay, you want to give it, you're going to get it.
You don't regret handling it that way?
Not one bit.
Not one bit.
No, not one bit. This is who I am, Gail. I'm not going to change who I am.
So states are really the incubators of policy, right? If you had to pick a state where an incubator of policy, would it be Kansas that should be replicated, Wisconsin that should be replicated on a national level?
You know, Nora, it's an amalgam. It really is. I don't think you look at any one. Look at what John Kasich did in Ohio last night. I mean, that's an extraordinary win. And John Kasich is a really compassionate guy who I think has put forward some very forward-thinking policies in Ohio. So, you know, people haven't noticed Ohio as much last night because it was such a big win. But that's a great job by John Kasich and an affirmation of his policy. So I think it's an amalgam of all those states.
If you run for president, you're going to face some pretty popular Republicans from Midwestern states.
You know, no one knows who's going to run. And I don't think anybody's made up their mind yet. At least not
I bet you a lot of
think
Republican
somebody-
governors got up this morning and said,
That's right.
I wonder how I might become
Yes.
president.
I made some
could
new
be.
friends on the road. I'm
Could be.
feeling
You
pretty
never
good
know.
about myself.
Can I ask you about the exit polls? Because we did ask, since we were talking to so many voters, we did ask who would be a good choice for president. And we asked them individually. And of them, Hillary Clinton, 42%. And this was a pretty Republican electorate, said she would be a good president. 28% said Jeb Bush. 24% said Chris Christie.
Good for that 24%, I guess. You know, we'll all go out and have dinner together. You know, I mean, you know, the fact is, it's way off. And you know, my view on all this is that my job this year was to elect Republican governors and re-elect Republican governors. And I didn't spend any time on anything else. No other fundraising, no other activities. All my political activity was on this. And I think this morning, we feel really good that we all stayed united together and we got the job done.
Governor, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Charlie, thank you. Nora, thanks.